this just, cause I'm not sure which one's going to be better.
Okay.
We have both going. Okay. So I think we're ready to start. Do you want to share with the internet who you are in relation to me?
Amy Sievert O'Keefe. I am Connor's mother.
There we go. So we're just kind of like jump right into it and get started.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about like your initial reaction when you found out I was trans?
Well,
Which wasn't through me.
no. I found out when I was in Florida on vacation with my parents, and I talked to your dad. Called him, once a day or so, and was walking around, and it was green grass and sunny, and your dad said something about, I had this kind of interesting conversation with our child, which I won't use your name at the time, but our child, and who told me think they are transgender. And this was maybe 6 years ago or so. And at the time I was kind of like, well, what does that really mean?
Yep.
Because I'm like, you have to explain it to me. Well, now it's like, duh. But back then, it wasn't very well.
It's kind of crazy, too, because that wasn't that long ago. Like, I'd say even, like, 2 or 3 years ago, most people didn't know what transgender meant.
No, I thought
very
of a
recent.
drag queen.
Yeah. That's
like a
kind of
transsexual, or trans whatever.
Yeah, you have, like, a general sense, but you don't really know exactly what it is.
Right.
What do you think was... And kind of going off how you didn't know like exactly what that meant, what do you think was the hardest part of the whole transition process for you to like wrap your head around and kind of understand? Like I know Dad had a tough part with like the medical stuff. That was probably his biggest barrier to like get.
Well, I think as far as getting it, once I think you explained to me, or I saw one of the YouTube videos that you watched, and you had us watch some of those, it was like, oh, okay, this kind of makes sense. I have this tomboy child who dresses pretty gender neutral, doesn't like dresses, has been this way for a while, but never really thought anything of it. And then it was kind of like, well, my first thought was, well, maybe they're just lesbian and not transgender. Lesbian would probably be easier than transgender. And more so fear for how's my kid going to go through this? Are people going to accept it? Just kind of a lot of questions. And then I think the hardest part for me was the name change.
Yeah, that's tough.
Not necessarily the he, she, or she, he, but the name change was more, that kind of was more like, whoa.
Yeah, because, I mean, you had a pretty big emotional attachment to my name, too.
Right, because you were named after my great aunt, and who was like a grandmother to me, and your middle name was my mom's middle name. So you were named that long before you were born. So.
Yeah, and then me and Dad picked the first name. Do you think it was helpful that, like, I kind of just threw the ball in your court for my middle name, because I didn't really care, and, like, let you pick that?
Well,
or was that just kind of a thing?
I mean, I was trying to pick something which my brother's middle name, it's not like it really means anything to me, but that's Uncle Terry's middle name. So, yeah, it was kind of nice to have something that...
It's kind of rooted in the family,
yeah.
so...
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's jump to... here we go. So, as a family, we went to therapy for, like, 6 months before I transitioned? I think it was...
No.
It was almost a year, actually.
Probably a year.
Yeah, but it was...
A little over a year.
I think it was, like, gender-specific therapy for more, like, 7 or 8 months.
Yeah.
Because we went to regular
Because we started out with just regular kind of gender exploration, kind of who are you exploration, what do you feel inside, blah, blah, blah. And then specifically started at the U, like, probably 6 months later. And then by the next June, when you finished 8th grade, you made the official kind of transition as far as here's my name and here's my gender.
Yeah, like the social transition happened. But what was the therapy? We'll start talking about just like family therapy, because we also went to group therapy, but we'll start with like just family therapy. What was that like for you? Was that like, I know that was helpful.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even just the general kind of realizing, like, let's figure out, who you are at the age of 12 or 13. Who do you feel like you are versus who might you be attracted to in the future? Just, you know, seeing some signs that showed me that, well, yeah, I think there's a female attraction to females there. So is it that you want that attraction to remain as a female or as a male? And at that point really wasn't our first point. Our first point was kind of like, who are you? Which we kind of figured that out in the first 6 months.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of, where do we go from here? Is getting hooked up at the University of Minnesota to kind of say, okay, now how do we delve into this a little bit further?
Yeah, like how do we keep going? All right. And then let's go right from that and compare that to the group therapy we did, which I think was a very different from.
Yeah, I mean, the group therapy was much more interactive as far as both with the kids and with parents.
Oh, yeah.
So, coming in pretty kind of green to this as group therapy, which I think we were in individual therapy for numerous months before we started group therapy, I believe.
Yeah. I
So,
think our individual therapist like suggested it to
well,
us.
and it was just they only had like one session of group therapy. We were pretty new, our group was pretty new to the interaction at the time. So it was very good to meet with, I think of two parents, or one parent in particular who I still communicate with, that her son was, her transgender son was like well on his way to social transition. He was in middle school, and there was another young man too that, to say, wow, these people are just like us. They're not, they don't have other challenges. The kids are doing well in school. It's just, there's this part of them that is just not fitting with them. And that it's like all these different families coming from all these different areas. And here we're meeting because there really isn't, at that time, wasn't a lot else, any other support groups within the Twin Cities 5 years ago that could offer this. And then both seasoned parents, I'll call it, helping us, and then us being the seasoned parents helping other people who, numerous of those parents, mainly moms, I still see now.
Oh yeah, you still.
And have seen their kids go through various stages and struggles to get to where they are. So yes, group therapy was very, it was nice for the kids to have their time together and for the adults to really be able to say what they wanted to say in front of other parents and get their feedback.
And I think like this is more for other families than for our family, but like we saw a lot of families come into group therapy with parents who were kind of in denial about the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I think like seeing other families who are doing the same thing helps you realize, oh, this is a real thing.
Right.
And this actually, especially at that time.
Right.
Like these days you see it out in the open much more and you see it on TV and that sort of thing. But like at that time it was never really talked about outside
Right.
of those situations.
Right.
And so I think that was super helpful.
Yeah.
So let's jump from therapy to. So I came out in the beginning of the summer. Dad helped with. You and I were in Wisconsin with the grandparents. Dad helped with kind of coming out for me to people here. I came out to Jake and Lori, and then you talked to Grandma and Grandpa,
Yes.
as well as I'm sure some other people at different points.
My work people, present and past, and
And so how was that? I mean, we got lucky and had pretty positive reactions, but
well, I think the weirdest was talking to Grandma and Grandpa.
I'm sure.
I told Grandma in the car when we were coming, we dropped your little cousins off, and we were coming back, and Grandma knew I needed to talk to her about something, and I said, well, this is the deal. And I got, when I started to tell her, I got a little teary-eyed, but then it was more so, you know what? It's okay. This is a good thing. And I don't think that happened right away. I think I got very teary-eyed at first, more so of, I'm losing a daughter, I'm gaining a son, more so fear for what you would be going through in your life. Then after initially telling some people, it was like I was pretty stoic in that This is the way it
You gotta
is.
get her done.
And I'm, they don't know how to react. I'm sorry. Well, you know what? It's okay. I'm fine. We've been through the process. We've been working through this now for almost a year and a
Wow.
half to 2 years. By the time we tell people, it's like, this is okay. We are okay with this. So, yeah, I think you do kind of mourn at first, which you do. You go through a grieving process as a parent of denial, acceptance, grieving, mourning, whatever the stages are, before you get to acceptance. This is it. This is okay. I'm not sad. I'm happy we have a healthy son who's doing well, being accepted by his friends, by his family, and there's nothing to be mournful about anymore. It's done.
And
It's over.
Yeah, and I think like as soon as you saw how happy transitioning made me,
Right.
that's probably when it started to kind of kick in of like, oh, this is like not a bad thing.
Right.
But I'm gonna.
Although when I dropped you off at high school, the first day of high school, when I started as Connor O'Keefe, I think I could have puked just as well as you could have puked. My stomach was in absolute knots for you that day. As well as, other like having to go to gym class for the first time and just all these firsts,
Yeah,
if you
that
think
was rough.
about your pain is my pain. And I feel, just as probably not as anxious as you, but until you have a kid, you would do anything and you feel what they are feeling and you feel it in a worse way because you can't really do anything about it.
Turn up a little bit. I'll go. This might be a happier question. So, but you mentioned like kind of the grieving process and going through that. And I think when people talk to me about my transition, they ask me a lot, well, who are your biggest like supporters? And I always say, like, well, you and Dad and like my friends. But well, you were even now, but also like when things were first starting, who do you think were some of your like biggest supporters that you could go to and get help?
Well, I think in the neighborhood, it would be probably Molly and Brian. Because you've pretty much grown up with Sam, your best friend, and you've grown up with them as, very close. So I think, Molly was the most, all of our close knit neighbors were just, they were there. They understood, they were empathetic, and they, they were there for you. So, and coworkers, I think they all care about you and they all ask how you're doing and blah, blah, blah. And some of them understood, like, well, I think of my secretary, who's like, couldn't be more proud of you if she was your grandmother.
It's very true.
Is just, they've been very supportive. I would say it was your dad and I really that worked through this on our own. With the two of us.
Yeah.
On the same page throughout the whole thing. More so, and then Dad's friends, John, and Mary. So yeah, I would say those are the people that if we needed a sounding board, but it was a lot of it was just the two of us.
This is kind of what I figured, but it's good to have that kind of mixed bag of support. And then this, I'm not sure what your answer will be to this, but I'm just kind of throwing it out. So, as it does with all parents, it took you and Dad a bit of time to kind of like figure out what was going on, get that whole transition thing. But do you remember any sort of like aha moments or like particular moments in time where you were like, oh, like not everything makes sense, but like a lot more makes sense right now? Or was it more of like sort of a gradual process that you really had to kind of work through?
I think in our first sessions of therapy with our first therapist, I think once you realize that I'm a guy and I don't feel comfortable in this anatomy I was born with. I am more comfortable being a man than a woman, a girl or boy than a girl, and that I think I'm attracted to females. I think I'm a straight guy who's attracted to females. And that was pretty much like, okay. It's like, okay, well, I think we figured that out, and now we need to go get more support, exploration as far as what does that mean and what do we do with that.
And we're kind of jumping into the aftermath of like after the initial transition. So how have you noticed like any significant changes in me since I've transitioned?
Oh yeah, I think I would say the first would be the well, first would be just coming out on Facebook like you did. But I think the biggest transition was, or the biggest transformation is after you had your top surgery.
Oh yeah,
I think
for
it
sure.
was just like, wow, I don't have to look at this anymore. I can go topless or topless. I can go shirtless. I can, really be a guy and feel not have to be bound up every day, uncomfortable, not being able to do physical activities, blah, 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 not being able to go swimming, whatever it might be. Yeah, I would say that was the biggest, both physical change. Starting T was probably
That was
another
another one.
one.
That one was more gradual, but like
Yeah,
as changes started to happen, that was a
right,
pretty big thing too.
right.
So yeah, just like sort of general gaining confidence.
Oh,
That's a big
yeah.
thing.
And then I think just, the fact that you came out at school, you weren't this stealth transgender kid
Yeah, that made a
anymore,
huge difference for
or
me.
this stealth male anymore. You were like, yeah, I'm transgender and that's me and blah, blah, blah. And getting involved in theater, I think the whole thing, just finding acceptance amongst many, many people. Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, you hear different stories from different people. Like, I know I've met some people who are, like, completely stealth all the time. Like, that's how they're happy, because they
Right.
just want to kind of live their life and do the thing. But that's just not me. Like, I like talking about myself too much.
But that his attitude has changed since
Oh,
you
yeah.
first started. It was like,
Exactly.
I'm Connor. I'm starting high school. I don't want anybody to know except I have these friends from the past that they're going to know. And I think from the very moment of this group of little friends you had from St. Helena, who protected you, and kind of the first thing was like, people are talking about, Connor. Should we tell him? Should we not tell him? And blah blah blah. I think you came to realize that, yeah, if they have a question about me, they can ask me.
Yep, exactly. And so how do you think our relationship has changed, if at all, since transitioning?
I don't, I mean, I'm sure you think that I'm somewhat overbearing or overprotective. Not really protective, but, again, you have to realize as a parent that there's nothing that I wouldn't do for you. So, again, your pain is my pain, and that has nothing to do with transition. That has to just do with being a parent. So, and you've had significant relationship that you know what it's like to love someone and that you would do anything for that person. So,
Well, it might make you feel better. I wasn't going to say you were overbearing. I think I've opened up to you and Dad a lot more since I've transitioned. And, like, that's been the huge difference, is it's
Yeah.
so easy to talk to you guys. And, like,
yeah, but it's also, there's stuff that you keep in recently and other
Yeah.
things that as long as you have someone that you can talk to, there's just too many instances of whether it's transgender kids, whether it's bi, whether it's whatever, and relationships and friends and family where they don't talk to someone and they do something that they shouldn't do to themselves. That's all I'll say about that. But whether it's drugs or alcohol, suicide, whatever, it's just too prevalent. And it's very much encountered in when, in the groups that we've met with many of these kids, it's been drugs and alcohol and attempted suicide within our support groups. And it's, it's on the Facebook pages I read all the time with the parents of transgender kids, of transgender sons, of transforming families. It's an emotional time,
Yep.
whether you're trans or not.
And I think the unfortunate thing, too, is you see it both ways. I mean, the pattern I see the most is I see kids who can't reach out to their parents because their parents aren't supportive, but you
Right.
also see parents who are trying to be supportive and kids that just don't know how to reach out to them.
Right.
So I think we're really lucky that we've always, like, we also have a very small family, so I think it's easier to to like
Right.
work with just the three of us. But we've always had a sort of very open dynamic, and like we're all very comfortable with each other, figuring that out. And so I've got one more question. After all of that, is you come from a position that I never can, kind of like you talked about, like being a parent, and like that's a huge shift in sort of life perspective. And I've been trying to make videos kind of pointed at parents, trying to give parents advice who have kids going through the same thing I've gone through. But I can never reach the perspective you can. So, long story short, do you have any advice for parents who are maybe more than anything just starting the transition process, or in just kind of still in that struggling zone of trying to figure out what their kid's going through?
Well, you have to get help. You have to reach out to, and again, that's when I've met with a few parents. It's giving resources. You know, you can't always get in for an appointment right away. That's a problem with a counselor. But there is stuff that's okay on the internet. There's just stuff okay that's on YouTube. There are tons of books out there. There are groups like Transforming Families, which is a local, and there are resources within to like, I need to talk to somebody. I mean, you know, there were times when you were on testosterone and you had some breakthrough periods and stuff that I'm like, help, I don't know what to do. My son this is a crisis the first time it happened, and everyone's like, da, 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 you know, check with your doctor, do this, you know, so it's reaching out. And, you know, whether you start with asking your doctor about it, whether you start with asking your kid, do you know another parent that I can talk to? But you have to explore. That's you know, we're not going to say this like Dad and I started out with gender exploration. It's like we need to explore where our child is at, figure out who they are and where they're coming from, and they need to have a safe place or person to talk to about this. And you just have to do it. You can't ignore it. Because there's just too many things. If a child's going to shut off, they're going to see stuff online that's maybe not good and not correct. And it's hard. It's hard for them, for you, a kid, or when they're a kid, younger, to kind of weed that information out. You have to get information. There's books. There's just so much out there. But we also have to educate the schools, the school counselors, the medical profession, everybody, pediatricians, adult medicine, whatever, about, you know, this is real, and they need to have the proper resources for referral also.
It was pretty good. That's exactly what I wanted. Is there anything else you want to add, or are we good?
No, I think it's just, you know, you can't ignore it. You can't just think it's going to go away. You have to help your child figure out who they are and why they're maybe unhappy or unsettled with where they're at. And could it be a stage? It could be. However, there's so much studies, there's so much research out there that this can start at such a younger age now.
Okay.
That there's genetic factors, that there's brain factors, that there's all kinds of things that you have to help your kid if they're unhappy with who they are or the body that they're in or whatever. You have to help them get some resolution, or you're going to lose your kid. It's going to happen, and you know, that's the worst case scenario. So
It does happen.
yes.
But there's a bright side to things. I'm here. I'm doing
Yes.
good. I'm not living on the streets. I'm not in a gang.
Right.
I'm, like, relatively well adjusted, and you and Dad are doing well. And so I think it's really important for people to be able to see our experiences, because you've been contacted by families looking for help. I've been contacted by trans kids looking for help, and being able to see just a well-adjusted family.
Right.
That, like, yes, me being trans is a part of our lives, but I mean, so is having, you know, different diseases or physical
Right.
disabilities,
Right.
or, you know, a whole plethora of things. That's just kind of life.
Right.
And it's sort of being able to go through it together that makes, like, a world of difference.
Yep.
Cool. We're done. I'll
Okay.
give you a hug if the puppy is going to get up, which he's probably not. Love you, Mom. Love you too, buddy.
And Puppy
Bye.
loves everybody.
He does. It's like, I think he has that face of like, I just woke up, what's happening? I've been sleeping for so long. All right. That was fantastic. That was